Ever wonder why it is that some guys in their 60s and 70s are walking around absolutely shredded while the rest of us feel like our bodies are just falling apart? I mean, a few years ago, I noticed my own strength slipping. I was hitting the gym, eating right, but honestly, I was just spinning my wheels. I was terrified this was just the unavoidable reality of aging. But then, I dug into the clinical data and discovered this hidden biological rule, a specific recovery secret the fittest older guys use to literally pack on muscle. I'm keeping the exact blueprint under wraps until the end of this explainer, but I promise you it is going to change how you train forever.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because frankly, this question literally kept me up at night. You know, I used to think aging was just this slow, unavoidable decline. I kind of felt like I had this leaky tire that I was constantly trying to pump air back into. You lose a little bounce in your step, maybe you struggle to get out of a low chair, and you just accept it. But then I saw guys out there absolutely defying time. And it hit me. I don't have to accept the flat tire. There is a totally different way to approach aging, and it starts with realizing that the rules of the game have completely changed for us.
I want to introduce you to a guy who totally shifted my mindset. His name is John DeMarcunis. He's 70 years old, and he lives by this quote right here. Age is just a number, but discipline changes everything. And look, he's not some pro bodybuilder. He's just a regular guy, a real estate consultant down in Florida who basically decided he wasn't going to slide into middle-aged mediocrity. He proves that building serious muscle in your 70s is 100% possible. But here's the kicker, and man, I had to learn this the hard way. John doesn't train like a 30-year-old. If you take a younger man's workout and force it onto an older man's body, you will literally break yourself down.
Before we get to that solution, we really need to understand the villain in my story, and probably yours too. It's called sarcopenia. Starting around age 30, we naturally lose about 3 to 8% of our muscle mass every single decade, and it accelerates big time once we hit 60. This is that slow leak I was talking about earlier. It's silent, right? You don't notice it day to day, but over the years, the pressure drops. And if we don't actively fight it, it eventually leads to frailty, a massive loss of independence, and a huge spike in the risk of catastrophic falls.
And hey, this isn't just about looking good at the beach, guys. Muscle is our absolute ultimate organ of longevity. Just look at the clinical data on aging and body composition. When they measure survival rates, the folks with the highest quadriceps strength are miles ahead. On the flip side, having low muscle strength can literally double your mortality risk. Double it! When I saw this data, a light bulb went off. Muscle acts like a metabolic reserve. It's the armor that protects us when we get sick or stressed.
Now check out this massive number. 43. Researchers tracked nearly 1,000 older adults and found something wild. For every single 1-point increase in muscle strength, a subject's risk of developing Alzheimer's disease dropped by 43%. I mean, that is huge. See, muscle isn't just for lifting groceries. It acts like a giant sponge for your blood sugar. When you have healthy muscle, it absorbs glucose, keeping your insulin levels stable and actually protecting your brain from the metabolic dysfunction that leads to cognitive decline.
So why was I struggling so hard to build that muscle? Well, the answer is anabolic resistance. This is the biological hurdle we all face as we age. Basically, our muscles become kind of hard of hearing. Think of your muscle growth receptors like a volume dial on an old radio. When you're in your 20s, that dial is super sensitive. You know, a light workout, a quick protein shake, and boom, the signal is loud and clear. You build muscle. But as we get older, the radio isn't broken, but the volume dial gets turned way down. The signal is muffled. We need a much stronger, much more precise signal to get those exact same results.
To turn up that volume, we have to respect the biological shift happening inside us. Every time we train, our body releases 2 main hormones. You've got testosterone, which is the builder, the anabolic signal, and then you've got cortisol, the stress hormone, which is catabolic and breaks things down. In a younger guy, testosterone rebounds super fast, but for us older guys, that testosterone rebound is much slower, and the stress hormone cortisol stays elevated way longer. Bottom line, if you stress your body again too soon, you are actively burning your muscle up, not building it.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact fatal mistake I was making. I was in the gym 4, sometimes 5 days a week, just pushing myself to the absolute limit. I figured, hey, more's better, right? Actually, scratch that. Clinical physiologists have measured this in men in their 60s and 70s, and the men who trained too frequently were destroying their own gains. Because I was hitting the same muscles before they'd fully repaired, I was constantly running a furnace and wondering why the house was getting colder. It's exactly like pulling bread out of the oven halfway through baking and wondering why you're just left with dough.
This brings us to the massive revelation that completely unlocked my progress, the 72-hour rule. Look, after a tough workout, your muscle protein synthesis, which is the actual building of new tissue, it spikes.
Now, for a 30-year-old, that whole repair process might wrap up in about 36 hours. But clinical data shows that for men over 60, our bodies require a full 60 to 72 hours to completely lay down new contractile protein. Our timeline is just different. We aren't broken, guys. We just bake a little slower.
72 hours, guys. Think about that. If you were hitting your chest on Monday and then doing push-ups or shoulder presses on Wednesday, you are leaving serious gains on the table. You're literally interrupting the construction crew before they've finished building the house. Once I stopped overtraining and started fiercely protecting that 72-hour window between hitting the same muscle groups, my strength absolutely skyrocketed. It was less work, for sure, but way smarter work.
So let's transition a bit and look at how this builds into the actual physical workout. Because when you do train, you've got to make it count. It's all about the 1-rep secret, time under tension. Aging muscle doesn't respond well to just violently tossing heavy weights around like we used to. It responds to a very specific mechanical signal. You need to put those muscle fibers under sustained tension across the full arc of the movement. If you slow down your reps, say 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down, you are sending a massive, undeniable growth signal to that muffled receptor we talked about earlier. And the benefits of that slow, sustained tension, they are mind-blowing. A clinical study showed that older adults doing a 10-week leg resistance program saw their plasma BDNF increase by over 65%. Now, BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's literal fertilizer for your brain. So, by doing your reps correctly, you aren't just building leg strength to prevent falls, you are actively building new neural connections and physically protecting your cognitive independence. I mean, talk about an incredible 2-for-1 deal, right? But remember, the workout is just the spark. The fuel is what actually builds the fire. And the absolute most important fuel for overcoming that anabolic resistance is an essential amino acid called leucine. Working out stimulates the muscle, sure, but leucine is the literal key that unlocks the door to muscle protein synthesis. As we age, our bodies become kind of terrible at processing protein, so we need a much higher concentration of leucine just to flip that growth switch to the on position. So, the crucial point is getting your nutrition completely dialed in. Here is the exact clinical protocol. First, prioritize high-protein whole foods. The data suggests men over 50 need about 30 grams of protein at every single meal. Within that, you want to make sure you're hitting between 700 and 3,000 milligrams of leucine. Supplementing with creatine is also highly research-backed for older adults to build strength. And finally, deep sleep is non-negotiable. That is when your growth hormone peaks. If you shortchange your sleep, you are essentially canceling the whole repair process.
All right, I promised you the hidden solution, the blueprint that brought it all together for me. Here it is, the functional strength blueprint for men over 60. Step 1, you train exactly 3 days a week. Not 5, just 3. Step 2, you use a push-pull-leg split. 1 day for pushing muscles like chest and triceps, 1 day for pulling like back and biceps, and 1 day entirely for legs. This guarantees zero overlap. Step 3, focus on compound movements, things that use multiple joints at once. And step 4, you aggressively protect that 72-hour recovery window. This is exactly how you work with your aging biology, instead of fighting against it.
I transformed my own body and got my energy back by following this exact science, stepping back to let my body heal and fueling it right. Look, it's not about ego and it's not about vanity. It's about preserving your independence and enjoying the rest of your life on your terms. So, I have one final question to leave you with today. Knowing what you know now about the science of aging, will you start treating your muscle as your ultimate organ of longevity? Or are you going to just sit back and let the tire slowly go flat? The choice is entirely yours. Keep learning, keep pushing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.